I'm just going to be pretty much reading out the speech that I made at Trans and Intersex Pride this year. Hope that's okay with everyone. I'm sure some of you have definitely heard it before. But yeah, so I'm Aoife. I'm a trans non-binary organizer with Neuro Pride, and I'm also autistic, and definitely exploring some other neurodivergences among that. Um, but part of the speech kind of focuses on something that is really integral to the health of disabled people, trans people, and intersex people, and definitely neurodivergent people um, among those groups, which is bodily autonomy, something that we, number one, in this country do not have across many communities. And number two, the rights which we do have are being threatened daily, publicly, and explicitly. So just a few weeks ago, we unfortunately saw the march of right-wing politicians, anti-choicers, and the religious right, who were openly and explicitly sharing their intentions to roll back on abortion access in this country. And obviously, in our recent elections, we've seen an increase in votes given to these misogynistic, transphobic, racist, and ableist politicians. And I think something that really strikes me, and I think it has struck a lot of us as activists, is that these people are no longer kind of lurking in the shadows and on the outskirts of society. They're very much out and proud about it. And it's something that we really, as a collective, need to address. Um, so these same, oh, hang on, I think I've frozen. These same far right people and politicians are using ableist narratives around disabled people in order to further restrict access to gender affirming care, which we all saw the damage of the Cass report, which is now being used by transphobes to further legitimize the pathologization of trans identities. And in particular, the Cass propaganda weaponizes neurodivergences, such as autism, cluster Bs, like BPD and other conditions under the MAD umbrella to undermine the autonomy of disabled trans people. The National Gender Service in this country is an outright disgrace, and they are notorious for denying neurodivergent trans people healthcare, as well as outright denying that someone is trans on the basis of their neurodivergence. I think some of us in this room here can say that we've had to hide our neurodivergence when accessing gender affirming healthcare, or have been skeptical of sharing any of our gender information with healthcare professionals in case they have a bias towards us. And I think this really plays into the widely held ableist belief that disabled people are incompetent and cannot make decisions about what is best for them. And in particular, neurodivergent people, people with an intellectual disability, autistic people, and so on. And I just want to be abundantly clear, and I was abundantly clear on the 13th of July, and I'm being clear now, that all disabled people should have the right to make decisions for themselves, including neurodivergent and disabled people in receipt of full-time care, and minimally speaking and non-speaking disabled people. This includes the assertion of their gender identity and if they wish to access gender-affirming healthcare. Just because someone needs support should not negate their autonomy as a person. There needs to be an end to denying disabled trans people access to life-saving gender-affirming care and self-determination. The far right are also using this ableist narrative of incompetence to remove abortion access in this country, once again citing the belief that disabled people and neurodivergent people can't make decisions for themselves or for ourselves. Access to abortion is so important for neurodivergent people and disabled people. Some people experience conditions that, if they experienced a pregnancy, could put their life at extreme risk, along with those of us who feel like we would not be able to healthily manage pregnancy, childbirth, and raising children, because I definitely fall into that category. Deciding that someone should continue with pregnancy, even if it could kill them, is eugenics. Despite what they say, the far right absolutely do not care about disabled people. Trans, non-binary, intersex, and disabled people deserve to have access to public healthcare that is informed by their experiences and knowledge, and is run by healthcare providers who do not claim to know more about our experiences than we do ourselves, which is something that we come across time and time again. This is a sentiment that is echoed in a long-standing disability rights slogan, "Nothing about us without us." And I echo it now to call for the dismantling of the transphobic and ableist national gender service, and for progressive, inclusive healthcare for disabled people and trans people alike. And though I don't think there are any here, I think it's important that we call on people and politicians who claim to be allies of our communities, of neurodivergent communities, of disabled communities, of trans communities, to not let the increase of the far right continue to erode what semblance of human rights we have. We need to ensure that abortion access remains and is more inclusive of disabled and trans people. We need accessible gender affirming healthcare that doesn't have a 10-year waiting list. We need to address the wholly inadequate disability supports in this country, particularly regarding means testing regarding supports, and independent living for all disabled people. And ultimately, we need to address the growing violence towards women, trans people, disabled people, neurodivergent people, migrants, and people of colour in this country. It's a collective effort, and I think something that Mackie said, that's the speech finished, but something that Mackie said really stood out to me, and it's something that I've been holding dear to my heart for the last few years since getting involved in activism, and that is we're all fighting the same fight, but on different fronts, that we're all doing our bit, we're all participating in our communities and advocating for our communities in different ways. We've got Neuro Pride here, which is really attempting to create community and support for neurodivergent people who are historically very isolated. And yeah, that comes in many, many ways. And it really does warm my heart to see the different activists and different voices being represented this evening. And though we're talking about some challenging issues, it genuinely does bring me a lot of joy and confidence that we can keep going forward to address issues facing our communities. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.